conflict was witnessed by millions through the eye of CNN and the BBC, showing propaganda of the systematic eradication of Saddam's forces by a coalition far superior in technological, political, and economic power. However, what was little known was that from the outset the war was engineered, controlled, and manipulated by an elite group. A group which had created the illusion of a man with power, at the head of a million-strong army, on the verge of going nuclear. A man who had gained control over 1/5 of the world's oil overnight. However, in reality, he was merely a pawn, in amongst many pawns, just a puppet in a grand master plan, with the Gulf War as a well-orchestrated stepping stone. The orchestrators of the war were by no means strangers to controlling major world events. In fact, they have done so for centuries.
In my book, there's a lot of genealogical research, you know, going back, Dick's family, my family, these heroic and amazing tales of people who went west. But one of the things I discovered is that Dick and Barack Obama are 8th cousins. What? Is that an amazing thing? Yes, if you go back 8 generations, really? They have a common ancestor.
These spiritual beings have been ruling this planet through very specific bloodlines, who long ago swore allegiance to these beings in exchange for wealth and power over the human race. In preparing the whole world for the ultimate spiritual deception these evil entities have planned. These bloodlines are literally able to be traced by genealogists all the way back to ancient Sumer and Babylonia, and these human familiars or pets of the demonic angels have worshipped Satan and his minions under many forms from the time of Sumer right up to our present day.
So there were new beings planted in the garden. Primarily, they had been created to function as sources of food for the collection of gods that had been possessed by evil. Secondarily, they were to be used as physical vessels to be possessed by the gods. Once possessed, they would be used to carry out evil's plan to spread death and destruction on earth.
Incest was practiced by ancient Egyptian royalty. Mothers married sons and brothers married sisters to keep the power and the money all in the family. Like their pharaonic ancestors, the British monarchy have a long history of incestuous inbreeding.
Is of an interbreeding between a non-human race, force, whatever, and humans, creating a hybrid bloodline, a fusion of the two DNA. Even in Genesis, we have one version of this, but you find this all over the world, in every culture. As the Bible says in Genesis, there were giants on the earth in those days, or in the earth as it puts it, and also after that where the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. And the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. These hybrid bloodlines, this interbreeding, produced the kings and queens and the elite royal families of the ancient world, where they claim their right, their genetic right to be the king or the queen or the leader because of their connection to the gods. And all over the world you find this. And what do we have today? We have the Queen as head of state of this country purely because of her DNA. In Sumer you find the same. Sumer, which became Babylon, which became Iraq, has ancient texts and tablets which describe the same recurring global story of this interbreeding to create this hybrid race. The hybrid race became known as the demigods, part human, part God, because of this interbreeding connection. This hybrid bloodline went off across the world, up into Northern Europe. It became the power behind the Roman Empire and the creation of the Roman Church, which became, of course, global Christianity. Much more about that as we go along. And everywhere it went, it became the royal bloodline, the elite bloodline, the one that became the leaders and the kings and the queens, and also the people in charge behind the scenes. And it interbred with other such bloodlines in Northern Europe to become the royal families and aristocratic families of Europe. And so today, these hybrid bloodlines are known as the Illuminati, the illuminated ones, and they're the ones that control the transnational corporations, governments, the banking system, the whole shebang that dictates and controls the direction of society.
Many of the United States presidents have blood relations with each other. The Bush lineage has blood ties to a great number of former presidents. George Washington, Millard Fillmore, Franklin Pierce, Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses Grant, Rutherford Hayes, James Garfield, Grover Cleveland, Teddy Roosevelt, William Taft, Calvin Coolidge, Herbert Hoover, Franklin Roosevelt, Richard Nixon, and Gerald Ford. Michael Tessarion points out in his work that Bush is closely related to every European monarch on and off the throne, and has kinship with every member of Britain's royal family. Bush's family tree can be documented as far back as the early 15th century. He has a direct descent from Henry III and from Henry VIII's sister Mary Tudor. He is also descended from Charles II of England. And we also find that George W. Bush is a direct descendant of Godfrey the Bullion. Godfrey was the first king of Jerusalem after he recaptured it from the Saracens, which was the name for the Islamic faith during the Middle Ages. It is interesting to note that the current occupation of the United States in the Middle East was re-established by the same family, George Bush Sr. in 1991, and again by George Bush Jr. in 2003. George Bush Jr. is then found to be a cousin to both opposing candidates of his 2 terms in office, Al Gore and John Kerry. Democratic President Barack Obama also has blood ties with George W. Bush, as well as Gerald Ford, Lyndon Johnson, Harry Truman, James Madison, and the British Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill. On the opposing side of the 2008 presidential ballot, John McCain is descended from Robert the Bruce, King William I of Scotland, and also Godfrey the Bullion.
Let me take you through this, branch by branch. Vice President Dick Cheney, the man who's only a heartbeat away from the presidency, is actually a blood relation. He's President Bush's 9th cousin once removed. Cheney's cousin Barack Obama is also Bush's 11th cousin, and the 9th cousin of Brad Pitt. But we're only just getting started. President Lincoln was President Bush's 7th cousin 5 times removed, and Bush shared more than just a ballot with John Kerry. That's right, they're 9th cousins twice removed. There's also royalty in the Bush bloodline. Princess Diana was Bush's 11th cousin twice removed. And then there's this bombshell.
Happy birthday, Mr. President.
Sure, she may have been singing to JFK, but what about GWB? He is, after all, her ninth cousin, 3 times removed. He's also related to Playboy founder Hugh Hefner, even Pocahontas, and Vlad the Impaler. Trace the family tree far enough, and you get Madonna, Celine Dion, and Tom Hanks.
All the United States presidents are direct descendants of European royal bloodlines. 34 of the US presidents carry lineage back to Charlemagne, the 8th century king of the Franks, and 19 of them can be traced back to King Edward III of England. This is no coincidence. The president with the most genetic royal lineage wins, as seen with all the American elections. Elections are just a sham to give the American people the illusion of choice, where 2 candidates are presented and we must choose which one we like more out of this popularity contest, not knowing that both are genetically connected. What are the odds that out of over 300 million people, the 2 chosen candidates would coincidentally be distant cousins and descendants of the same monarch? If America is the land of freedom and was separated from European monarchies in 1776 by the Declaration of Independence, then why do the presidents follow a royal bloodline back to European monarchs? Obviously, the presidents are not democratically elected, as we are led to believe, but rather the presidents share lineage to royal bloodlines. George W. Bush is a descendant of King Henry I, the son of William the Conqueror, tying the Bush bloodline back to British royalty from the 12th century. William the Conqueror won the Battle of Hastings in 1076 AD and invaded Britain from France. The Sinclair family supported William in his invasion of Britain and were a prominent family. Al Gore is a cousin of Richard Nixon and is a direct descendant of King Edward I. This bloodline connects back to the Holy Roman Empire, and not only is Gore a cousin of Bush, but he is also tied back to King Charlemagne. So I did some digging on Donald Trump, and one of the things that I found out is Donald Trump is actually related to Hillary Clinton. Their 19th great-grandfather is King Edward III, so they are also involved in this presidential royal lineage as well. Not only is Donald Trump a descendant of King Edward III, but Trump also shows relations to Danish and Norwegian royalty. So many people claim that Donald Trump is trying to drain the swamp and that he is fighting the establishment from within. However, I don't think that could be further from the truth. The fact that he and Hillary Clinton are both related, and the fact that Trump is also a descendant of European royal monarchs, I find it almost impossible to believe that he could be fighting the establishment, since he seems to be no different than any of the other presidents we've had. Yet again, we can see an example of how the illusion of choice is presented and how Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are both related, and Donald Trump won because he shared the most royal lineage. It's the same story, just different presidents. The bloodlines of these European monarchs connect all the way back to Alexander the Great, who conquered Greece, Phoenicia, Syria, Persia, Babylon, and Egypt. He founded the city of Alexandria, which became the center of the most esoteric knowledge of the ancient world. Not only do the presidential bloodlines go back to Constantine, the first Christian emperor of the Roman Empire, but the bloodlines go back further before Alexander the Great, back to the Egyptian pharaohs, such as the lines of Amenhotep, Ramses, and Thutmose. For generations, these pharaohs, emperors, kings, and queens have ruled over us and interbred to pass down the bloodline. Since the beginning of history, these interconnected bloodlines have ruled over us and claim that they have the divine right to rule given by God or gods. It is the same lineage that for thousands upon thousands of years has claimed superiority and ruled over us from the dawn of recorded human history.
So your take on the New World Order is that it's really an old world order that originated from Atlantis, basically, and now the new name would be Zion?
I haven't said that explicitly, but that's a good way to say it, because it does seem that it's somewhat of a Zionist New World Order, though a lot of links, go to the Vatican and the Jesuits in Rome. The exact hierarchy, who's on the tippity top of the capstone, is still debatable in my mind. But there's definitely a group of rich psychopaths who have been leading humanity for thousands of years, them and their progeny. It's a royal thing as well. If you look at it from monarchs, I mean, and pharaohs going back, actually the same blood, like the Bush bloodline, goes all the way back to the ancient Egyptian pharaohs and passes Roman emperors and a whole bunch of English kings and stuff along the way. So, I mean, we have had a conspiracy of sorts of familial rule over peasantry. That's been going on for thousands of years. But now, in this century, now it's coming to a world order. It's coming into fruition. The United Nations and the European Union and all the countries, the nationalism is fading away, and we're coming into an international way of being, an international political and economic system. That kind of system, it has been going on for literally thousands of years. And if you don't know that, then the manifestation looks pretty much like one big conspiracy, and in a way it is.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. An era in which the nations of the world, east and west, north and south, can prosper and live in harmony. 100 generations have searched for this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars raged across the span of human endeavor. And today that new world is struggling to be born. A world quite different from the one we've known. A world where the rule of law supplants the rule of the jungle. A world in which nations recognize the shared responsibility for freedom and justice. A world where the strong respect the rights of the weak.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
the Tower of Babel. This monument, commissioned by Nimrod, would be his power base, his castle, his palace, his throne. It's estimated that around 600,000 people were gathered together for its construction, and we find the motivation for it in Genesis 11, where the people say, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth." These lofty words may remind you of those spoken by Lucifer in Isaiah and Ezekiel. "You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the Mount of Assembly, on the utmost heights of the sacred mountain. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High." Notice the words, sacred mountain, the idea that God resides atop a mountain. It is repeated again in Ezekiel 28 when God says, "You sinned, therefore I cast you as a profane thing out of the mountain of God, and I destroyed you." Now, the Tower of Babel is often misrepresented in paintings. You'll often see it look something like this. But it was actually a kind of ziggurat, which is a pyramid-like shape. Indeed, from the Babylonian ziggurats we get similar structures in Egypt, Africa and South America, remains of which can still be seen today and are amongst the world's most beloved tourist attractions. The reason that they are this particular shape is that they were built to represent mountains. Satan wants to be like God. He therefore mimics him in every way. The people Satan influences do likewise. Just as Satan wanted to ascend to the mountain of God to become God, the people he influenced were the same. Nimrod built the Tower of Babel to represent a sacred mountain, at the top of which he would have his throne room, his heaven, and he would rule from there not just as a king but as a god. It represents the deification of man, the idea that man can become a god. It is the old serpent's lie from Eden. Nimrod's subjects would have to ascend up the steps of the mountain for his council. In a city full of low-lying, flat-topped roofs, he would literally be the Most High amongst them, a constant visual reminder to the people of his supremacy. Wherever they were within Babylon and for miles around, they would see the top of the tower and to know that their king and God was keeping a watchful eye over them from heaven, monitoring their every move. This would strike a mixture of fear and awe into his subjects. Nimrod was the initiator of the idea of emperor worship, although it may not have been his idea originally. Evidence suggests that Semiramis was actually the brains behind this concept, and that it was a clever device for helping them keep a tight grip on their subjects. She appeared to understand that a surefire route to gaining earthly honor, prestige and power is through religious authority. Spiritual authority secures temporal authority. Nimrod was more than happy to go along with it, just as Adam was happy to go along with Eve in the Garden of Eden. By turning himself into a god and establishing emperor worship as a common practice, he maintained control over his subjects. Because of his association with fire and the sun, he became known as the sun god. His consort, Semiramis, understandably became associated with the other leading light in the sky, a moon goddess. Around themselves as the sun and moon gods, they created an entire religion that was based on a corruption of primeval astronomy developed by Noah's righteous ancestors prior to the flood. This religion has come to be known as the Mystery Religion.
From the shadows, they have engineered every major war, revolution, and recession. They control everything you read, everything you hear, and everything you see. They have managed to indoctrinate an entire populace to their way of thinking, and have infiltrated key positions in places of authority. And it is from the shadows that they have created a new political order, a new economic order, and more sinister, a new religious order. Their ultimate aim is total global domination, and they will stop at nothing to reach their goal. the goal that was outlined in a speech given by former President of the United States, George Bush.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order.
However, the origins of this global plan were not created in the offices of the White House. In reality, their roots lay in another war. This time, the year is 1095, and the place, Clermont, France. The 11th century Europe was ruled by the Church, which held a firm grip on the hearts and minds of the people. This power enabled Pope Urban II to wage war on the Muslim Caliphate and crusade in what he called a War of the Cross to recapture the land of Jerusalem. It had been under Muslim rule since the year 637, but in 1099 this rule was brought to a bloody and sudden end. In the name of the cross, women were raped and murdered. Children were put to the sword, and it is said that blood ran in the streets knee-high to the horses. Out of this land of bloodshed and terror, a group of men arose. Men that would stop at nothing to get what they wanted, no matter what the cost. 20 years after Jerusalem was taken, the Dome of the Rock was seized by a group of warrior monks calling themselves the Knights of the Temple of Solomon, or more simply, the Knights Templars. In Jerusalem, the Templars began to deviate further and further away from the practices of Christianity. They learnt the secret arts of the Kabbalah, an ancient form of Jewish magic, along with its dark rites and rituals. The Jews had learnt the arts from the pagans of ancient Egypt during the times of enslavement to the Pharaoh, and developed them into Babylon at the time of Nebuchadnezzar. In 1307, King Philippe of France arrested them for charges of denial of Christ, homosexuality, and idol worship, as well as magic. In 1314, Pope Clement V declared all Templars as heretics to Christianity, ordering all their properties to be seized. Their leader, Jacques de Molay, was captured and burnt to the stake. The Templars were cornered, and just when it seemed they were finished forever, a glimmer of hope arose from a seemingly certain end. They were to find a safe haven as well as an ally. But not in France. In fact, in a country in a desperate struggle for independence against the English, the country of Scotland. For some, Scotland's hope of independence had died with the death of William Wallace. However, to the King of Scotland, Robert the Bruce, the arrival of the Templars gave him a new secret weapon. Their experience, gained over 200 years of fighting the mighty armies of Islam, had made them expert in combat and warfare, and more than a match for any army brought before them. In 1314, the Templars, allied with Robert the Bruce and his army, took to the fields of Bannockburn in the long-awaited showdown with the English. Robert the Bruce's foresight paid off. The 25,000-strong English army suffered a humiliating defeat at the hands of only 6,500 men. The dream of an independent Scotland had finally been achieved. The Templars had brought themselves back from the brink of destruction, and never again would they allow themselves to be destroyed. This time, they would control the country by controlling its kings, and in order to preserve their secret order, the Templars would have to die, or more precisely, the name would have to die. The Templars, who had escaped Europe, were finally laid to rest in Roslin Chapel, Scotland, which stands to this day as sign of their presence in Britain. Their descendants became the true power of Scotland. In 1603, the death of Queen Elizabeth I left England without an heir to the throne. By virtue of descent, King James V of Scotland became King of England. In doing so, Scotland and England joined to form a new kingdom, and the power that the Templars held over Scotland spread to give them a firm grip on the whole of Great Britain. For over 100 years, the Templars concealed their activities, fading into the background until they were little known and little remembered. However, they did not cease to keep a firm grip on Britain. All the time they were planning, regrouping, and infiltrating positions of power in all corners of the kingdom. In 1717, the Templars made their reappearance in Europe. They had grown in both number and strength, and were now ready to coin a new identity, free from their reputation of the past, and given credibility by none other than the monarchy and aristocracy of England. And the name they chose for themselves was a name that would be known by many, but understood by a few. This new name, the Freemasons. The new identity and the grandeur of its members afforded the Masons with respect and dignity. The first royal member of the Freemasons was Frederick, Prince of Wales. The latest members include Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, and consort to the current Queen of England, Elizabeth II, who herself is a grand patron to the Masons. However, behind closed doors, the Freemasons were free to indulge in the secret rites and rituals handed down to them by their ancestors, and these became the basis of their levels of membership, called degrees. The Freemasons were not content with power in Britain alone. Their ambitions were far greater. In the years to come, the world would witness Europe and America being plagued by wars and revolutions, each more devastating than the other. However, these would not be as commonly believed the spontaneous effects of a downtrodden people, but in fact schemes created by the exclusive few, driven by hunger for absolute power. All this would take place from the very country from which they had fled centuries earlier, and would come with the base for their global domination.
I'll tell you what's the worst part about television is the programming, the philosophy, okay? I mean, the manipulating of your mind, the philosophy, the mentality, the system of thinking, the ideology. That's what's wrong with television. That's what's wrong with movies. That's where they're really getting in your head. Take, for example, Walt Disney, right? And many people that will preach against the TV, they'll preach against the movies, they'll preach against Hollywood because it's obvious that stuff is bad. But then they'll say, well, we watch Disney movies. And I've been to the home of preachers and Christians who would never watch TV or the movies, but yet they have the whole library of the Walt Disney movies. You know those white plastic cases? And they have them all lined up. And I mean, they have tons of them lined up. Of course, I don't know how many there are, but there's hundreds of them. They have them lined up and lined up. And they have their kids watching those movies all day long. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to prove to you right now that those movies are wicked. Say, what? Disney movies? Come on, you're crazy. They're rated G. Well, let's see. First of all, did you know this? Did you know that Disney movies are filled with subliminal messages? Subliminal messages. Now, what are we talking about tonight? Sorcery. What are we talking about tonight? Getting inside your mind and messing with you, controlling your thought process by supernatural means or demonic means. Or hey, I'm going to tell you something. Disney movies are filled with subliminal messages. And you say, oh, that's a hoax. I've seen it with my own eyes. When I was a teenager, I had a friend of mine sit me down at his house and show me the subliminal messages in the Disney movies. They're filled with subliminal messages. Let me give you some examples. The Lion King, filled with subliminal messages. Okay, all throughout the movie, there are pornographic pictures hidden in the movie. Like you'll be watching the movie and just for a few seconds, something filthy will come on. Like off to the side, there'll be some kind of a, reproductive anatomy will pop up, over here. And then over here, there's this one point where the lion, he kind of goes like this. And a cloud of dust comes up and just spells the word sex. And the word sex is put in the Lion King movie subliminally, literally hundreds of times. Hundreds of times. The shapes on the screen will spell the word. And I've seen it. I mean, I had my friend sit me down at his house and pausing the movie, showing me the word sex popping up on the screen at different times because he knew where they were. And he would show me these things. Another one, and they all are filled with it. Aladdin is another one. In the movie Aladdin, there's a part in the movie where the guy, what's his name, Aladdin? There's a point in the movie where he tells Jasmine to take all her clothes off. But you don't even know it unless you know it's there. You listen to it, and he mumbles it kind of under his breath.
Leave me alone.
So how's our little bow doing? Come on, good. Can you just take off? So how's our little bow doing? Come on, good. Can you just take off? Come on, good. Can you just take off? On good, can you just take off?
And I mean, once you know it's there, you hear it just as clear as day. But you didn't know that it was there, you wouldn't hear it. And The Little Mermaid has a filthy picture drawn in the cover on the front of The Little Mermaid. And nobody would realize it until somebody shows you and says, look at this. And you look at it, whoa! And all throughout the movie there are scenes, I'm not even going to describe some of the scenes in The Little Mermaid, where subliminal messages are coming on the screen. The other movie, Beauty and the Beast. There, a nude woman pops up a few times in the background of Beauty and the Beast, filled with subliminal messages. Your kids are watching it, and their mind is maybe not even seeing it, but it's going into their subconscious. Words flashing on the screen. Over and over, sex, nudity, filth, just all the smut is just coming on the screen. Oh, those movies are harmless. They're filled with subliminal messages. Who knows what your kids are being programmed? Oh, but you know what? I'm sure that it's only just the Disney movies. I'll guarantee you it's the rest of Hollywood probably doing the same thing. And these Disney movies, at first when I was a teenager and somebody showed me this, I thought it was just a couple movies, a couple scenes, but as time has gone on, I've realized that Virtually every Disney movie is packed with hundreds of subliminal messages to program the minds of your children. Okay, but then forget the subliminal message. Just the message of the Disney movies is perverted. Even if you just forget the subliminal message. I mean, forget, what movies did we bring up? The Little Mermaid. You know, a half animal, half human being. That's perverted in and of itself. All throughout the Bible, every false god is a half animal, half human being. They're constantly merging of animals and human beings. It's paganism. It's wicked. And yet every Disney movie is pretty much based on the merging of a human being with an animal. It's described in the Bible. And the movie The Little Mermaid, you know, she's topless the whole time, right? She's just wearing like a bikini top. How is that? Is that how you want your daughter to dress? Is that, oh, but there's no cussing, there's no nudity. Do you want your daughter going around in a bikini top? Is that modest apparel? Is that what Jesus Christ would have you to wear, ladies? No. The movie's filled with Satanism, witchcraft. There's some, what is it, Ursula, some witch that's casting spells and using sorcery and demonism. Oh, pretty innocent, right? All of them are filled with it. In the movie Beauty and the Beast, the whole first half of the movie is these prostitutes in the town that are dressed just half naked, dancing around, you know, admiring this guy, the big, strong, handsome guy. But all these girls are dressed indecently. They're obscene in their gestures, subliminal messages, and then the whole movie is basically just exalting a certain physical standard of appearance. Beauty and the Beast is a movie about a woman who falls in love with an animal. And in the movie, they keep acting like, well, he's just ugly. He's not ugly, he's an animal. But there's a difference between being ugly and being a beast, being an animal. And if you've seen the cartoon, it's an animal. It's like a dog. It's like a big dog man or something. I mean, it's clearly an animal, and yet she falls in love with him while he's an animal. You know, only when she kisses an animal does he become a human being. Oh, wow. And you say, well, what's wrong with that? Read the Bible sometime.
Hey guys, it's Jared. I pray this video shed light on the satanic, Luciferian, Illuminati indoctrination of our children through subliminal messages and Disney movies. I understand that you may not believe this, but when you look into who is making these movies and you see the fruits of their labor, it all makes sense. Walt Disney was a Freemason obsessed with the occult and used his movies and his theme parks as a tool to indoctrinate the public into his beliefs. Club 33 in the Disneyland parks is symbolic of the 33rd degree of Masonry. This symbolism is also put into the Disney movies. In the Dumbo movie, after getting drunk, Dumbo and the rat have lucid dreams that contain satanic, Luciferian, and Illuminati symbolism. Disney also displays its corrupt satanic agenda through programming of their idols. They introduce innocent stars that slip under parents' radar and build up a fan base. As the idols get older, they corrupt them and send them on a crash course in a dragnet plot to drag some of their fans down with them. Examples of this are Miley Cyrus, Britney Spears, and Christina Aguilera. I know the 666 in the Disney name is hard for some people to accept, but it is not Walt Disney's signature, as many believe. It is a made logo, and even as a kid I remember thinking the logo looked odd. It didn't look like any D I had ever seen. The Y doesn't even look like a Y, and the squiggly above the I are all part of the hidden mark of the beast symbolism. Think about it. This mark is on everything Disney, and as if to affirm its importance and the mark of the beast promotion, on many Disney stores, Mickey's head is made with the same 666. If you still think it's a stretch, then you're probably comfortable with the hand scanning technology they are implementing for VIPs to enter their park and access their rooms. It is a forerunner for the RFID, Mark of the Beast technology. They are getting the people ready. All these plots are satanic in nature. If you understand the Masons, Illuminati, and the times that we're living in, it should all be obvious to you. Jesus Christ came to save us from this system. In 1 John 2:15, he said, "Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him." Jesus knew this system that Satan was going to be creating. He knew about Disney before it was even here. Satan doesn't play fair. He doesn't wait until you get older before he starts trying to plant his lies in you. He wants to get kids as young as possible and indoctrinate them into his system. Jesus also said, "What is highly esteemed among men is an abomination to God." The reason why these Disney movies are so prevalent, the reason why people young, old, big, and small of this world are watching them, is because it is highly esteemed among men, and it is an abomination to God. Our Lord wasn't saying these things to keep things from us or to make life less fun. He was saying these things to protect us. He knew Satan's deceptiveness and his plot to destroy us. As we put our faith in Jesus Christ and his work of salvation for us from this system, and we live in the Word of God and in the Holy Spirit, we will overcome Satan's snares. As we get closer and closer to the end times, the devices of the enemy are going to get more and more devious. I have videos on my channel explaining some of these deceptions that Satan has laid before us, and I'm making a playlist called Defeating the Antichrist. Brothers and sisters, this is our time to unite. Let us flee from the unclean thing, and let us put our eyes on the glory of Christ.
The Vatican has been promoting paganism for centuries, and rightly so, as prophecy does declare in graphic detail that a religion would come to power in the last days under a church and state banner, wherein the pagan gods of Babylon would be uplifted and actually merged into Christianity. I mean, seriously, some would not believe how many Bible verses there are that actually touch on this. And now that we are in the last days, right before Jesus returns, the dying God of Rome can no longer afford to hide his agenda behind closed doors, as he has little time left to work, so he's got to get it out there. And so today, we even have Vatican prelates admitting in writing that they do in fact embrace the pagan gods of Babylon, just as our Christian God prophesied that they would. I mean, check out just a few of many Vatican statements regarding this. They said not too long ago that it is interesting to note how often our church has availed herself of practices which were in common use among pagans. Thus, it is true, in a certain sense, that some Catholic rites and ceremonies are a reproduction of those pagan creeds. They actually admit this in writing. They also said in order to attach to Christianity great attraction in the eyes of the nobility, the priests adopted the outer garments and adornments which were used in pagan cults. You see, that's why they dress the way they do to this day. Those robes and all that, that's just all pagans. Then they also said that the church did everything it could to stamp out such pagan rites, but had to capitulate and allow the rites to continue with only the name of the local deity, which is a pagan god that they're talking about, changed to some Christian saint's name. And then this last one is my favorite. I use this one quite often, as some of you know. But Cardinal Newman actually admitted in his book that the use of temples, and these dedicated to particular saints and ornamented on occasions with branches of trees, incense, lamps, and candles, and votive offerings on recovery from illness, holy water, asylums, holy days and seasons, use of calendars, processions, blessings on the field, sacerdotal vestments, the tonsure, the ring in marriage, turning to the east, the ecclesiastical chant, and the Kyrie eleison are all of pagan origin and sanctified by their adoption into the church. But just last month, the Pope actually participated in a worship ceremony wherein a pagan god was worshipped and glorified on camera, people bowing to this thing and everything. In fact, some of his very own flock got so upset that he did this that they actually tossed those pagan gods into the Tiber River, as you recall, because the Pope set those statues up to be glorified even after the pagans that were worshiping him left. He set them up to still remain as worthy of worship. And, by the way, we all know how the Vatican admitted they changed the Sabbath to Sunday centuries ago to honor the pagan sun god Baal. And they even admit they did it without a single Bible verse to back it up so as to fill their church with people. And so prophecy has been fulfilled many times on this, wherein we now know the popes of Rome are not only pagans, they openly embrace the spirit of Antichrist. And not too long ago, some of you know, they were exposed as actual Satanists or devil worshippers, to the point that the Vatican now has buildings honoring Satan as their god right out there in the open. But what they did the other day was appalling even for Rome. As we all know, the popes of Rome claim to be anti-abortion. But those of us with eyes that see know they only do that to keep a viable foot in America's political door. Basic reality is the Pope recently honored abortion activists on camera. I mean, worse yet, the Catholic Church actually has many hospitals aborting babies all over the world right now, wherein we now know, due to the testimony of an ex-Satanist who declared abortion was nothing more than a child sacrifice unto Satan for him and his cohorts. I did a video all about that guy. Yet the Pope now glorifies that very same demon of child sacrifice that we see spoken of in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 7, that says, "Then did Solomon build an high place for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, in the hill that is before Jerusalem, and for Molech, the abomination of the children of Ammon." The Bible clearly says setting up Chemosh and Molech, which were idols that were designed to receive child sacrifice, the Bible says they are an abomination. Yet the Pope not only set up a huge statue of Molech to be glorified and worshipped, as he does every other pagan statue in his churches the world over, he placed this idol at a time in history when children are being aborted by the millions each year all over the world. And so this further proves Satan is pushing his long prophesied agenda forward, using this man of sin in Rome. In fact, all the popes are, in fact, prophesied man of sin. And he's doing this so as to cultivate idol worship, as he has done since day one, along with displaying an open mockery unto the Christian God himself, wherein this Jesuit, who also stands as Pope, placed that satanic idol that represents the killing of innocent children in front of the Colosseum, the Roman Colosseum, wherein 2,000 years ago, innocent Christians that worshipped Jesus Christ, who refused to bow to the pagan gods of Rome, were burned alive so as to light up the Colosseum at night as they fed other Christians to the lions as entertainment for the Romans. As prophesied, the man of sin has been revealed in these last days. Thank you for watching. God bless.
Childs is an Australian performer who topped the charts after winning the second season of X Factor Australia in 2010. On April 15th of this year, Altian published a 5-hour video claiming he was initiated into the Freemasons and that Freemasonry is hiding the true world religion, Satanism. He goes on to reveal how every initiate must swear a vow of secrecy to never reveal the secrets of Freemasonry to anyone whatsoever, under penalty of having their body severed in two and their bowels burned to ashes, their throat slit, and their tongue torn out by the roots.
This is the sign you do upon entering and exiting the ritual room while facing the Grand Master. It stands for throat slit, and it goes like this.
They use symbolic gestures to flaunt their secret religion, such as the sign of the Master of the Second Veil, or the Hidden Hand, the sign of silence. As you move up the ranks of Freemasonry, the oaths of silence for taking each degree become more brutal, having your heart torn out and fed to wild beasts, your head struck off and placed on the highest spire of Christendom, destroying your business and reputation, and hanging you in your own home. Masonic rules clearly stipulate that the Lodge has the authority and obligation to uphold these mandates and penalize any member who violates them. Masonic rules also warn members from inviting the vulgar and profane. The profane is what they call the uninitiated, anyone outside their secret order. As one climbs the ladder of power in Freemasonry, each degree requires more barbaric acts from the initiate, from being humiliated and stepped on, drinking wine from a human skull, stabbing human skulls. And in one of the highest degrees, the initiate removes a blindfold to find a severed human head lying on the floor with a bloody knife beside it. He is instructed to take the knife in his right hand and the head in his left. Eventually, this leads the initiate to accept human sacrifice as a rite of initiation, which is the ultimate goal of this unholy hierarchy. 33rd degree Mason Manly P. Hall who was named Freemason of the Century, wrote that Freemasonry is a religion and that initiates are intentionally misled until they reach the highest levels. He wrote that Freemasonry is an outer organization concealing an inner brotherhood, one visible and one invisible. The invisible is dedicated to the service of a mysterious arcanum arcanorum. Having a belief in a supreme being is required to become a Mason, and the atheist is looked upon by the Mason as being the most vulgar and despicable of mankind. But who is the supreme being in Masonry?
Freemasonry is Satanism in disguise.
33rd degree sovereign Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite, Albert Pike, wrote in Morals and Dogma that Lucifer is the light bearer. 33rd degree Mason Albert Mackey wrote that Lucifer is good, light, victory, and initiation. And 33rd degree Freemason of the Century, Manly P. Hall, wrote that the mystery of the craft is the seething, surging energies of Lucifer that can be wielded by the initiate. This is the symbol for Satanism, and this is the symbol for female Freemasonry, the Order of the Eastern Star. The Satanic Bible lists Baphomet as the symbol of Satan worshipped by the highest level of Freemasonry, the Templar Masons. In the Satanic rituals, it is written that Masonic orders contain the most influential men in government, and virtually every occult order has Masonic roots, and that every rite of the Nazis' Black Order employed Masonic principles. Both Satanism and Masonic rituals involve the goat, the coffin, and the death's head. Anton LaVey wrote that the Masonic rituals serve as a screening process for organized Satanism. Freemasons can also be seen making the 666 hand gesture.
I'm a Christian, sir. I'm pure and virtuous and wholesome and innocent. How can you say anything bad about me? Sir, you need to be born again. I am born again. Now, did you just say that you are Lucifer? I am Lucifer. Okay, define Lucifer for me. Pure, virtuous, wholesome, innocent individual that's out to help people. Lucifer is? Yeah. Say that again. Lucifer is a pure, holy... Virtuous. Virtuous. Now, is he the Lucifer that God created? That's the same one.
At the highest level of the so-called Illuminati is a perverted sex cult, which is why high-level Mason Walt Disney not only saturated his films with Masonic hand gestures and 666, but also added subliminal images with hidden sexuality. Altion claims that the square and compass are actually symbolizing the sex act, the woman's legs spread open and a man mounting her. The G symbolizes the generative principle of creation. The all-seeing eye symbolizes the head of the penis, and the rays shooting forth the orgasm. Each year, 13 high-level Masons may be invited to join the top of this monstrous pyramid, the Royal Order of Jesters, dedicated to nothing but sexual depravity.
There is no sin. There is only nature. Why do you think that witchcraft has disappeared? It never disappeared. It was hidden, forced to go into hiding by the appearance of Jesus on the human scene. Another reason why he's passionately hated.
33rd degree Mason Aleister Crowley wrote how he pecks at the eyes of Jesus on the cross, how the New Age will arise from the destruction of Christianity, and how all children shall be accustomed from infancy to witness every type of sexual act. According to the royal art of Freemasonry, magic is the highest and most divine. And what is this magic?
Any living being is a storehouse of energy, varying in quantity according to the size and health of the animal. At the death of the animal, this energy is liberated suddenly. The animal therefore should be killed within the circle. For the highest spiritual working, one must accordingly choose that victim which contains the greatest and purest force, a male child.
We are witnessing the culmination of their mysterious arcanum, the destruction of Christianity and the mass sacrifice of humanity. Created in 1979 by the Masonic Order of the Rose Cross, the first Luciferian commandment carved into the Georgia Guidestones is to maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. High-level Mason Friedrich Nietzsche wrote how Christianity is more harmful than any vice, and considered Christians sick animals. Their utopian New Age, as written about in the Satanic Bible and in the Lucius Trust, consultants to the European Union, is nothing more than the absolute destruction of Christianity. Aleister Crowley wrote how the people need to be ruled by the state and the world must be bathed in blood to usher in the New Age. Subversion of all governments and world religions has been going on in secrecy for centuries. Religious leaders, heads of state, and your favorite pop stars have practically all been absorbed into this hidden hand of Satanism. In 1991, the Noahide laws were signed into U.S. law by Skull and Bones member George Bush. Once these laws are practiced openly, it will be blasphemy to call Jesus Christ your Lord and Savior, punishable by death. They want to bring us back to the days of blood sacrifice. Whether you believe or not, the culture of compassion, mercy, and love is Christian. Christ ended the days of blood sacrifice. Christ forgave us of our sins, all of us, liberated us, so that no man could stand between the individual and God. It's no wonder why they hide in the shadows. With a religion based on their own weakness, their so-called magic is nothing other than ruthless thuggery and deceit. Like broken animals, they fear the true light and want to drag you into the darkness with them. Don't let them.
I believe the devil wants to take over the church. I believe the devil wants to take over this church, one person at a time.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Close your window, go back inside your house.
Pardon, sir. Go back inside right now! I am inside.
We have a real chance at this new world order. An order in which a credible United Nations
Tasers.
can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
After 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we got a lot of disorder.
It's been a long time coming. Because of what we did on this day, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
Its task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity.
Talk about the New World Order defined, as you have, as being Luciferian.
Yes.
How do you know that?
My investigations led me to look at the back of the American dollar, and I found these strange seals on the dollar here. They're Illuminati seals, which was a secret society set up in 1776 by a man called Adam Weishaupt. And on the back of the dollar here, you see the seal on the left-hand side, and there's an eye in the triangle. It's the eye of Horus in Egyptian mythology, now called the eye of Lucifer or Satan. The two words at the top, Annua Chaptus, stand for announcing the birth of, and down the bottom, Novus Ordo Seclorum.
And that great seal of the United States has on it, Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new order.
And people should be asking the question, what is an Egyptian pyramid doing on the back of an American dollar? What link-up is there between America and Egypt? The answer is none at all, except in the field of the occult. And thus we see we're dealing with a Luciferian plan. People need to recognize the God of Freemasonry will lead the world into this peculiar and particular purpose for which America was set up, which is to lead the whole world system into a one world government, a one world religion, a one world law system, and a one world money system that the Bible calls the mark of the beast.
And basically what we know for a fact, that there's going to be a changeover from the old order to a new order, a rule by Satan himself. That's what that symbol refers to, and that's what the New World Order refers to. In the King James, 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "Therefore, if any man be in Christ, he is a new creature. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are new." Notice how the New English Bible renders this verse. It says, the old order is gone and a new order has begun. They're using the same language. The King James says, which stood only in meats and drinks and divers washings and carnal ordinances imposed on them until the time of the Reformation, talking about Christ coming. But notice the NIV calls it until the time of the new order. They're preparing people.